This is the voice of the Committee of Enigmas, a special subsidiary group of the Trans-Global Institute of Archaeological Investigations. My name is Dr. Mungo McRae, and I wish to introduce you to the Hontropy X Phenomena Archives. A new dispatch has arrived from Dr. Marian Tarknassus. A letter, handwritten, rambling, and even incoherent, which I will read to you without further delay. She writes, "My dear Dr. McRae, much has happened since my last communication, and somewhat for the worst. The implications are highly significant for what they reveal of a hidden order of exoscientific phenomena that in a wider context change everything. You will remember my account of the terrible incident involving the ghost seer in the restricted zones of Station 44. That particular entity is now released into a world it does not belong to, while presenting extreme dangers to those who encounter its raucous energies. But the fact is, it is not alone. There are other entities, both of a similar and different type, originating from other sites in the space-time continuum, and possibly outside of it, which have infiltrated the precincts of our universe and the atmospheric containment of the terrestrial dimension. I have previously explained the government's development of new technologies that enter into the dynamics of extraordinary possibility, surpassing even those of the parafaction device quite emphatically and to much greater effect. More to the point, these new technologies have enabled a conduit of transition to open up between spatio-temporal diversities throughout the cosmos, meaning that different kinds of entities from different parts of the continuum and exocontinuum can gain access, either by accident or design, to the material paradigms of the cosmogonic human reality. The ghost seer is one such trespasser. It appears, however, that there are more. I suspect that there are entities of a particular type who have manipulated the government technologies that gave them access here, and have used them to travel back in time to the very origins of our species. I believe that they have secreted themselves in the unraveling of our planet's history, pulling the strings of evolution in ways we cannot account for, and for purposes we cannot know nor hinder, except in the case that we stage a willful, careful intervention. Following the incident at Station 44, I fled the vicinity of Mormond Hill. You will recall my intentions to seek refuge in the secret glen in order to escape the attentions of the Quadrant, and in particular, the mysterious cohort of overseers who called themselves the Archivists. I arrived at the decaying stately edifice of the House of North in the secret glen on foot, crossing the uninhabited hinterlands of Clashendarach. I was immediately welcomed by the caretakers, Mr. and Mrs. Formartin, who greeted me with their customary warmth and instantaneous provision of victuals. Once refreshed and well fed, I disavowed the need for sleep, and much to Mrs. Formartin's scorn, made directly for the secret laboratory and study rooms in the hidden wing of the old mansion. The laboratory, I noted, was in a pristine condition, having been attended to by the Formartins with the diligence we have come to expect of them, but have never taken for granted. Likewise, the study rooms and the repository, with its abundant shelves of documents, books, journals, and maps. The old couple, who is said to be related to the warlock Gregor Willix of Glenanne,
were as reliable as ever for their loyalty to the committee and in the pursuit of arcane knowledge that defines us.
As I closed the concealed entrance of the hidden wing behind me, I determined to consolidate my recent discoveries in the field and to plan a course of action that would allow me to gather evidence to confirm, once and for all, the existence of the anomalies I had borne witness to in Station 44. My dear Dr. McRae, I have spoken of the technologies that have been developed by government forces and the advanced scientific knowledge and expertise that informs them. I have spoken, too, of strange lights in the sky around the far northeast of Scotland, the oddly shaped airborne objects that have been seen circling the beach of Cullochen Bay, and the wooded recesses of the Gog's Den and the Tor of Troop. I have spoken of the attempts of the British Secret Intelligence Services to establish contact with the inhabitants of these strange illuminated
skyborne vessels.
This we know has been achieved. But what I have begun to unravel goes well beyond the point of initial contact. Initial contact. In the first instance, let me speak of what I have learned of the Archivists, which is to say, very little. The Archivists, it seems, precede the modern gamut of governmental departments and secret intelligence or military infrastructure. They are officially unaccountable, without mention in the usual sources of publicly unrecorded government exploits and classified deeds of state. But they are known to have exerted an ineluctable presence throughout the course of history, emerging in vague references expressed in private memoirs and diaries and lesser-known exchanges of letters between government agents, dignitaries, privileged elites, and royal vassals. The situation felt somewhat hopeless. Nevertheless, a feeling had taken hold of me which, by degrees, was beginning to impose itself on my front-line thinking. It concerned a series of ambiguous references and a few loose transcripts I had worked on over the years, which I had taken from localized artifacts in the northeast of Scotland. One in particular occurred to me as somehow significant, a transcript of several obscure locations that were mentioned in the marginalia of an early medieval manuscript, the Book of Deer, and which were listed, as they put it, decayed settlements of the pagans.
Decayed settlements of the pagans, now much given to ruin, with broken slabs embellished with vulgar scratches and the likeness of uncanny beasts and tall grey men. An odd enough remark which I paid little attention to at the time because of other priorities. But it struck me now as patently obvious that the vulgar scratches referred to were examples of the Pictish ogham. And what of the tall
grey men and the uncanny beasts? Suddenly, an idea was forming in the side of me that there was more to this than meets the eye. The Book of Deer was a highly significant text that was created in a monastery that stood in the northeast parish of New Deer, but which no longer existed. The Book of Deer, however, had been ably preserved and was eventually stored in Cambridge University Library, but it has been kept since 1715. I had visited Cambridge some years previously to study the text while researching the activities of obscure Scottish saints who, I believed, may have been wizards rather than holy men. I realized that I had stored these transcripts in the repository of the hidden wing in the House of North. I quickly sought them out and brought them to a study room, spreading them out before me and scanning them for the information I craved. I soon ascertained that the strange locations stated in the marginalia were given as the Sailor's Nook near Kilden Bay, Quentin's Hoard near Randolph's Keep, and the Laird's Archivum at the ancient seat of 5e Castle. Of these places, I only knew of one that existed, namely 5e Castle, and the Laird's Archivum, most likely referred to the Charter Room, in which the castle's ancient archives were kept. I therefore decided to depart the House of North for Fyvie Castle the following day.
Much to the consternation of Mrs. Formartin, who exclaimed that I was clearly malnourished and in need of rest, made evident by my wiry frame
and hollowed-out darkened eyes.
I was determined, however, and arranged for transport in the morning that took me to Rhynie.
From there, I made a series of ad hoc journeys through the rapturous hills of the northeast until I reached the historic village of Old Meldrum. I walked the 8-mile distance to Fyvie overnight from there, arriving on a wet morning at the gatehouse, where I requested an audience with the resident laird, Alexander Forbes Leith. I was already acquainted with the laird through our mutual membership of the Society of Antiquities of Scotland, as well as my previous visits to the castle. "My dear Dr. Tarknassus," he exclaimed, "it is always an honor to receive you here. You must avail yourself of our resources as you see fit. But first, shall we share a dram of Glengarry to renew our old acquaintance?"
Of faith as being something that began and ended in my experience. Now my attention was not on the one who was saved, namely myself, but on the one who had reached out from heaven to meet me, to redeem me, to forgive me, and to claim my life for him.
The dram shared and my senses duly aroused, I hastened to the charter room of the castle in which the archives of historical documents, books, deeds, and manuscripts are kept. I spent the whole day and night rummaging through its extensive shelves and partitioned vaults. At some point, I discovered a safe box in one of the vaults that contained a series of old parchments bound in leather for protection. The parchments, it appears, included transcripts of ancient fragments, which I realized with some excitement made reference to the Pictish Ogham. At the same time, there were 2 pocketbooks in the safe box dated from 1750, in which were written carefully construed mathematical formula and alphabetical symbols, which to my amazement comprised a cryptographic key or cipher designed for decoding the obsolete cipher texts of the Pictish Ogham. I have included a copy of this cipher in my current communication, which is intended for your brother, Dr. Archibald McRae,
a leading expert in the science of epigraphy, who will no doubt relish this remarkable find. In the meantime, one of the pocket books also contained the wording I'd seen in my own transcripts at the House of North, referring to decayed settlements of the pagans, now much given to ruin, with broken slabs embellished with vulgar scratches and the likeness of uncanny beasts and tall grey men. But this time, written alongside the transcript, there was also mention of what appeared to be a specific place name, somewhere I'd never heard of before. Perhaps one of the decayed settlements of the Marginalia, which was stated thus, with a question mark, Dunakir. And below this was written in an untidy scrawl a phrase with an odd word which looked similar to the word Archivists, but may have read something like the Kriverist, or perhaps more likely, the Krivren. The word made no sense to me and was impossible to read with any certainty. I decided to return to the House of North to take stock of my investigations and prepare myself for what came next. I possessed the cipher, and now I possessed an archaeological point of reference in the place name of Dunakir, whatever it might be. I felt sure that Dunakir would present me with an example of the Pictish Ogham that may lead me in turn to learn more of the Archivists, and indeed the Krivren, whoever they might be.
In the meantime, I have secreted the pocketbooks and parchments of Fyvie Castle in the safe box and returned them to the vault in which I found them, positioned to the left of a first edition of the complete works of the Biographia Literaria by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. I set about my journey to the House of North once again, taking the usual precautions as I travelled towards the foothills of the Cairngorms and through their narrowing glens. It took me 2 days to negotiate the terrain and traverse the lesser-known routes. As I passed through the gate upon my arrival, I noticed that the front door of the House of North had been breached, clearly by forced entry. The lock and handle were broken, and the door facing cracked and splintered. I entered furtively and immediately sensed that Mr. and Mrs. Formartyn, and that the house felt empty. Eventually, having searched the ground floor and the upper floors, I descended the staircase from the scullery to the basement, and there I found them. Their bodies had been weirdly mutilated in ways that did not make sense, as if torn with a deliberate precision that avoided any logic or symmetry, administered by a sordid force of intelligence whose aim was to extract the greatest measure of pain through their actions. The oddest thing of all was that thin silver wires had been inserted into their veins and some exposed parts of their flesh that extended randomly in many directions, like the branches of little trees. The heads of Mr. and Mrs. Formartyn were oddly shaped also, as if they had been infiltrated by a vacuum suction pump that deprived them of their organic contents. Their eyeballs had been sucked inwards, like shrunken urns. It occurred to me, given the extent of their suffering, that the perpetrators were seeking to elicit information from their victims to learn the whereabouts of the true object of their search, me, which meant that they were fully aware of the insights I had acquired about their secret operations at Station 44. As I looked upon the mangled corpses of the Formartyns, I noticed among the disarrangements of their flesh a small, solid, triangular metallic object of singular appearance, shining dully amidst the blood and bones of the basement massacre. I reached down, picked it up, cleaned the blood off with my sleeve, and immediately felt an exuberant thrill of ecstasy, such as I've rarely experienced in my entire life, notwithstanding my occasional use of narcotics and couche during my visits there in the early 20s. But more than this, I felt myself caught in the grip of a stunning vision of psychological clarity. I was no longer in the basement of the House of North, standing among the body parts of the Formartyns. Instead, I was wide-eyed and fully alert within a realm of greater awareness in which a colourless vacuum swirled around me like a liquid gas. Erected before me was a tall man in a vapid grey suit that seemed too big for his unnaturally lanky frame. He wore discoloured spectacles, the lenses of which swirled with a murky luminosity that felt like magnets of nothingness. The strangest thing of all, however, was that I knew immediately who he was, or rather, what he was. That he was one of the Archivists, and that he had come to me through the telepathic conductor of the triangular object I had found on the floor. What did this mean? Was it a form of trickery designed to unsettle me, or to tap into my deepest thoughts? Or was it a means through which they were able to detect my whereabouts, to come and find me, and to do unto me as they had done to the Formartyns? Fearing the worst, I let go of the triangular object, which seemed to linger in my open palm as if levitating by means of an invisible force, before dropping into the puddle of blood that lay at my feet. Before I hastened away from the House of North, for I was clearly in great danger so long as I remained there, I checked the concealed entrance of the hidden wing and found that it was as imperceptibly secured and had not been breached. I entered and made for the map room, determined to identify the location of the site of Dunakyr, which assuredly was the next objective of my mission. It took a while, and I was fearful of the return of the tall grey men, but I found it listed in a book of Gallic place names of Scotland, and then on a map of the eastern seaboard, which showed a protrusion or islet on the southern side of the Bay of Stratlethan, near Stonehaven. A sea stack, no less, marked in faded lettering
as the fort of Dunakyr.
I am heading there now,
And will update you with my findings at the soonest
possible opportunity. I urge you to send some sturdy men of the Institute to recover control of the House of North and protect its contents from the attentions of the interlopers. They have already violated its valued space and murdered its caretakers with the cruelest means at their disposal. Its purpose as a refuge of the secret Glen has been compromised, but the contents of the laboratory and the adjacent rooms remain untouched. I sign off with a warning. The Archivists are alert to us and are clearly hell-bent on preventing us from conducting our inquiries into the mysteries they are involved in. They have killed the four Martins in the most brutal manner imaginable. I therefore say to all members and all subsections of the committee, wherever you may be on your guard, be vigilant, and take extreme precautions in whatever you do. I am their principal target for now, but if ever they catch an inkling of the Committee of Enigmas more broadly, it is certain they will put all of you in their sights, and that none of us are safe. We have an enemy, my friends. Let us defy them by whatever means we can muster, using violence if necessary, and bearing in mind that there is more to them than meets the eye. Your friend in earnest, Dr. Marian Tarknassus.